Tonight on Mississippi Insight, the impeachment effort heats up. Congressman Bennie Thompson addresses the issue and the recent immigration raid. Also, the race for Mississippi governor. Election night is just a month away. More on the conversation with Jim Hood and Tate Reeves. Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. First tonight, a top Mississippi Democrat is renewing his call for impeachment of President Donald Trump. This all comes as President Trump asked the president of Ukraine to investigate presidential candidate Joe Biden and his son. Congressman Thompson tells us, our Gerald Harris, America is in dark days and impeachment is the way to go.
Representative Bennie Thompson says the Ukrainian phone call adds to his great concern of what he says is the administration's disregard of the rule of law.
This instance is one that of national security, that you basically tell a foreign country, if you don't do this favor for me, I'm going to withhold resources that your country needs. That's not who we are.
Thompson is also concerned about the president's effort to identify the whistleblower who first alerted the world about the phone call.
The president was more concerned about who let the information out. He's not concerned about the fact that he broke the law, even to the point of saying, you know what we used to do to people who tell things.
The District 2 representative also has an issue with the role the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, has played in discussing investigations of American citizens with foreign governments.
He shouldn't be utilizing assets of the government because he's the president's lawyer, but he's his private lawyer, not the Attorney General.
He says others involved, including Attorney General William Barr, is flawed in this investigation. He says there are standards that needs to be upheld.
He was talking about more than foreign policy, but the personal benefit for him, as well as threatening a potential candidate for president the next year, and want to hold that country hostage in terms of resources if they didn't participate.
Thompson adds it's dark times for Washington, and it is his hope that the committees will do a full investigation.
Well, Congressman Thompson also addressed immigration, specifically what he called missteps in the August raids by ICE agents. Next month, he plans a hearing about the raids, as he told our Gerald Harris.
Conduct of the raids, looking at what went into it, because as we look into it, there appears to be some missteps that cause great concern. And so we want to bring the religious community, the elected community, the business community, all those communities that were impacted, and see whether or not ICE conducted itself in a manner that they should have. As you know, I've been concerned that on the first day of school, a lot of kids were basically abandoned by the fact that their parents were locked up. There are some procedures that should have been in place in terms of notification of other authorities that we have questioned that they were not done. So we'll have to look at it.
That immigration raid hearing will take place November 7th. That's 2 days after the November 11th election. And when we come back, our recent interviews with the two main candidates in the race for governor. We're hearing from Jim Hood and Tate Reeves. Welcome back. Election Day is exactly 1 month away, but this time, November 5th, we could know who's the next governor of Mississippi. Recently, 12 News sat down with both main candidates, Tate Reeves and Jim Hood. Tonight, part 2 of our interviews. 12 News' Gerald Harris talked with Attorney General Hood about a number of topics in his priorities, starting with the state's mental health issues.
I mean, we've recently gotten sued from the federal government for failure to provide mental health care out in the communities. You know, we don't have enough psychiatrists graduating to cover areas like in North Mississippi or the Delta or different places within our state. And so it would provide such benefits, and it would help us solve that lawsuit that we recently lost. You know, there's a stack of letters where I was warning the lieutenant governor and the governor and the speaker that, you know, we're going to get sued, and it's going to be like Georgia had to pay $225 million is what it cost them. So he just stuck his head in the sand and didn't do anything. In fact, got us sued, and that's the reason I wrote letters, because I knew what they were going to do, and they, you know, try to blame somebody else now for it.
And here in, you've talked about it, Central Mississippi. How do we push the economy forward? We're moving at someone would say a snail's pace in comparison to our surrounding states. How do we energize us?
Well, you know, the road bill, that's 8,000 working people swinging hammers, and you boost the economy by working people, helping working people. That's how the economy moves historically. You know, people like Tate Reeves, they tell us time and again, we've seen out in history, you know, oh, don't you worry, we're going to give your tax money away to these corporations, and they're going to create all these jobs. Well, they don't. They take the money out of state. That's where our money has gone. That's why we don't have money for roads and bridges. So what we need to do is invest in Mississippi businesses. Instead of all these fly-by night outfits from out of state, we need to invest in Mississippi business, Main Street businesses in our state, get them to grow jobs, but they've got to keep those jobs, and they've got to guarantee us that they're good paying jobs. But we need to develop more tech incubators, because these young people have ideas, for example, for an app. They can make $1 million off of it. I wouldn't know how to use it if they gave it to me, but they can make $1 million, and now they can do it in a house in Oklahoma, Mississippi with 8 employees. You don't have to build that infrastructure out. You know, with our kids leaving, as I said, Mississippi has lost more kids the past 6 years of any state in the union. They're millennials, they're young people that would start a business, a tech business, and you know, it's important for us to give them opportunities, show them how to get the capital for it, how to develop it. But more importantly than that is broadband. Because in these rural areas, we want those tech jobs. They're moving out of Silicon Valley, or moving out of Austin, Texas, because of the huge cost of living out there. They can move to these small rural areas if we have broadband. And so what's going to be crucial, I want to see us give some tax cuts to those providers to expand. I want to give cities the opportunity to provide broadband, as well as encourage those electric co-ops and give grants to them. So it's broadband and technology are two of the huge waves. If we miss that wave, though, in Mississippi, I'm afraid that our kids will never catch up this century. I mean, we're at a corner post in our state. We can either keep doing what we're doing, and it's not working, our economy growing at 2%, or we can invest in our kids and our people and make a difference in our state. And we're at one of those cornerstones in our state's history where we have an opportunity to seize upon a wave of technology that will help 2-lane road towns like I'm from, as well as 4-lane highway towns as well. So we've got to be smart in how we do it, and we've got a huge opportunity here, and I just pray we don't miss it.
Education, will you commit to fully funding education here in Mississippi?
Yes, you know, we've had that model of MAEP, Mississippi Adequate Education Program. We put that in place to keep us from getting sued, because back in the late 90s, other states were getting sued because we didn't equally fund schools, and poor areas ought to get the same amount of money and opportunities as wealthy areas. And so, you know, it's our duty to those young people. You know, those poor, Jesus talked more about the poor, taking care of the poor, the orphans, the elderly, than anything else in the New Testament. And, you know, we hadn't been doing that, and we have a duty, particularly in education, to help those poor school districts to be properly funded, and that's something that we can do. It may take 4 years, it may take a little while to get us there, but we have got to set a trend, because those kids have been underfunded the past 8 years to the tune of about $2 billion. And, you know, we're not going to help economic development by cheating our schools.
And the last question is basically on your support of other candidates. You've spoken about this. You said that you have your own race to race. Can you respond to, I guess, some criticism that you've gotten from one particular candidate in particular about your lack of support?
Yeah, you know, my dad, when I ran for DA in 1995, you know, told me that you run your own race. When you're in a race, you run your own race. And that's been good advice. In fact, my sister or somebody put it, it's framed in my office. You know, that saying from my father. And that's what I followed. I haven't endorsed or gotten in anybody's races for anyone in this race. It's going to be hard enough for me to fight and hopefully win for the working people of our state. And, you know, I'm certainly going to be trying to get out our vote, and that will help all of us to have more people vote and participate in the process. So that's the position, you know, I've taken in every race, nothing different for this one.
When we come back, more of my conversation with Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves. Welcome back. An expected endorsement in the race for governor, but a major one nonetheless, as President Trump throws his support behind Tate Reeves. In a pair of tweets, President Trump said Reeves is strong on crime, tough on illegal immigration, and will protect your Second Amendment. The president also slammed Jim Hood, writing, quote, Democrat Jim Hood will never give us his vote, is anti-Trump and pro-crooked Hillary. I recently sat down with the Lieutenant Governor for a wide-ranging interview, his priorities and how he deal with fellow Republicans with different priorities. How do you deal with the infrastructure issues? Because we know we don't have the money for it, but you need the money to deal with the issues. So how do you generate the income?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Byron. It's the reason that we had a special session in August of 2018. We made a good first step. We agreed to spend $1.1 billion more on public infrastructure without raising anybody's taxes. But again, that was just a good first step. We've got more work to do. Because we've been fiscally responsible over the last 8 years, Mississippi's in the best financial shape we've ever been in. Because we've been fiscally responsible, Mississippi's in the best fiscal shape we've ever been in. We're going to have a rainy day fund that is full, $554 million, which is 10% of our annual operating budget. The reason that's important is not because we have a large balance over here. The reason it's important is because it frees up money in our budget so that we can invest in our priorities. And so when you talk about things like improving teacher pay, we were able this year to give a $1,500 a year across the board pay raise. That's not enough. That's a good first step. We've got more work to do, and I think you'll see over the next couple of weeks proposals coming from our campaign to continue to increase teacher pay. And the reason we're excited about doing that, we're fiscally responsible, we have the resources to do it. I will actually produce a plan that we can pay for without raising anybody's taxes. But the reason that's so important is because I believe that success begets success. And what's happening in our classrooms, although a lot of people aren't writing about it, but what's happening in our classrooms is really miraculous. We're seeing student achievement is improving across the board in Mississippi. High school graduation rates up from 73 to 84%. Fourth grade reading and fourth grade math. Eighth grade reading and eighth grade math results up across the board. In fact, in fourth grade reading, our 10-year growth numbers are better than 48 other states for our fourth graders. We're second in the nation in gains. We need to reward our teachers for seeing significant academic achievement across all levels, and we can do that now because we have the fiscal resources to do it. We can do it without raising anybody's taxes. The same is true in infrastructure.
When you talk about raising teacher pay by how much would you be able to go up on teacher pay? You talking about $2,000, $3,000, $4,000?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our goal will be to get to the southeastern average within a limited period of time. We've increased teacher pay by about $4,000 a year over the last 5 years. I think we can do that at least over the next 5 years, and we're looking for ways in which to do that. We want to do it in a responsible way. We're not going to be on the campaign trail and go out and promise things that we can't keep. We're not going to go out and spend money that we don't have. That's one, you know, I've got people look at me and they think a lot of things, but one of the things I think that they look at is that if I say that we can get something done, then I'm going to go out and fight very, very, very hard to do it. And if I say that we have the fiscal resources to do it, I have the the pedigree to actually go get that done.
One of the criticisms that you've had is that people believe that you've cut taxes too deep. We've gone too deep with cutting, and therefore the revenue isn't there anymore. How will you address that issue that you've made too many cuts, and therefore we don't have the money to do what we need to do today?
Yeah, there are no doubt that there are liberal Democrats that believe that we should never cut any taxes. And sometimes they use bogus numbers to suggest that revenues are not coming into the state. But the only problem with that argument is it's just not true. They say in spite of, I would argue because of the largest tax cut in Mississippi history, Mississippi's going to collect more revenue this year than we've ever collected in the history of our state. That's because when you allow individuals, when you allow Mississippians to keep more of their money, they know better how to spend their money than any governmental entity ever will. And so what they do is they have more money in their pocket and they go out and they spend it. They go out, they go to restaurants, or they go buy a new pair of shoes, or they go do whatever it is that they do, and that money turns over in the economy. And what ultimately happens is when the economy is doing well, there are more jobs. We're not actually asking those who are already paying their fair share to send more to Jackson. We're creating more taxpayers. Those 88,000 more people working, guess what? They now have more money in their pocket also that they're pumping back into Mississippi's economy.
And you've been totally against Medicaid expansion. There's others, even within your party, that believe in some form of Medicaid expansion. How do you deal with the health care crisis that we have in the state?
Well, I am opposed to Obamacare expansion. There's no doubt about that. But I do understand that there is a coverage issue in our state. And I will tell you that we are working to continue to find ways to ensure that not only affordability, but also accessibility to health care is available for every single Mississippian. There are a large number of things that we can do. We have a plan that we announced just a couple of months ago. It includes more telemedicine. It includes more doctors. It includes more residencies for physicians, not only just in Jackson, but in rural parts around our state, because that's typically where doctors locate, is not necessarily within a certain radius of where they do their 4 years of medical school, but they locate within a radius of where they do their residencies. We need more residencies.
The rural hospital issues of those threatening to close. How do you deal with that issue of the rural hospitals that are threatening a lot of these areas of closing down?
Yeah, no question. We're working with our friends at in the hospitals and finding solutions to do that. I think there's a number of ways to do that. Telemedicine is one way to do that because it helps them cut costs. It also helps them provide better care because they can provide, through telemedicine, they can provide specialists, which then keeps people in their local communities. And so the issue is not only in terms of accessibility of care, but it's also affordability of care. Can local Mississippians actually go to the hospital and afford the care that they're getting, but also are they getting the care that they need? And so we believe we've got a number of things that we can do to make that a reality, and look forward to doing that over the next 4 years.
What do you think is going to decide this race? What do you think voters are looking for that are going to decide whether they pick you or Jim Hood?
I think voters are going to look at our records, and I think they're going to recognize that I am a conservative leader and have been for many years. And they're going to look at my opponent and they're going to see him as someone who portrays himself as something that he's not. He's been a liberal Democrat for the last 16 years. There is no state law which says you have to run as a Democrat. He went 8 years under the Obama administration, the first couple of years of the Trump administration. He looked at those two individuals and he said, I am more likely to win as a liberal Democrat running under the party of Hillary Clinton than I am to run and win under the party of Donald Trump. That's a clear distinction between the two of us, and I think that's what people will ultimately look at and decide.
All right, we'll stay tuned and we'll see what happens.
All right, thank you, Byron.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll be right back. Gubernatorial candidates Jim Hood and Tate Reeves will debate on October 10th at the University of Southern Mississippi. 12 News will host that debate in front of a live audience. I'll be moderating. The debate will start at 7 p.m. We do want to hear from you. What questions would you like for us to focus on and ask the candidates? Let us know by submitting questions to news@WJTV.com. We are your local election headquarters. Election Day is November 5th. Attorney General Jim Hood and Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves aren't the only candidates running for governor. There are two other candidates, including independent David Singletary and Bob Hickingbottom, representing the Constitution Party. 12 News' Gerald Harris was there when Hickingbottom kicked off his campaign.
Bob Hickingbottom of the Constitution Party unveiled his campaign plans as he unloaded against Democrat nominee Jim Hood in the Republican Party.
The Democrats have put us in their hip pocket, and the Republicans have written us off.
Hickingbottom describes himself as a political operative. He made race a central part of his announcement as he endorsed all black statewide candidates. He also laid out policy proposals like expanding Medicaid, but didn't say how he would pay for it.
I hadn't quite figured out how we're going to pay for it, but I can assure you one thing: if we have to have a little revenue enhancement, that's going to get to save our rural hospital.
One proposal having nurses and doctors who are currently behind bars practice medicine for minimum wage until their sentences are over. For infrastructure, Hickingbottom says a fair way to fix it is a gas tax, but he says Mississippi needs help from the federal government.
This problem is so massive, for want of a better term, that we're going to have to get this federal government to come in here. This is going to have to be like the Marshall Plan or something.
For education, Hickingbottom wants to match vocational and technical training with industry and give teachers a raise.
I want to make certain that our first responders, our law enforcement people, and our teachers, I want their salary brought up to the southeastern average. Now, how are we going to do that? I hope the lottery would do it. I don't think so.
The general election is November 5th. In Jackson, Gerald Harris, 12 News.
And we'll be right back. A reminder, join us for the 2019 gubernatorial debate live from the University of Southern Mississippi this Thursday night. And join us back here next Saturday night. If you missed any of our tonight's program or to see previous episodes of Mississippi Insight, go to our website. It's WJTV.com. Thanks to Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, Attorney General Jim Hood, and Congressman Bennie Thompson. For Gerald Harris, I'm Byron Brown. Make it a good night.